This is the story of a woman who left home one morning, never to return, and the husband who was left to pick up the pieces. Hello, I'm Sarah, and I'm on a mission to uncover stories of resilience and hope that often go untold. And one of those stories is about a couple whose lives were torn apart in an instant. It's a tale of love, loss, and the unexpected twists that life can throw our way. As someone who spent years documenting human experiences, I can tell you that this story will touch your heart and remind you of the strength of the human spirit. You know, when I first heard about Maria and Carlos, I couldn't help but think about how quickly our lives can change. One moment, you're living your everyday life, and the next, everything you know is turned upside down. It's like when you're driving along a familiar road, and suddenly, without warning, you hit a detour that takes you somewhere you never expected to go. So, let me take you back to that fateful morning. Maria woke up early, just like any other day. She had a simple task ahead, to buy milk for their daughter. As she got ready to leave, she placed her hand on her pocket, feeling the small, precious secret she carried, an ultrasound image. She was pregnant, and her heart was full of hope and excitement for the future. Carlos had already left for work. He worked construction, a good 2 hours away from their home. It was hard work, but he did it gladly, knowing it was providing for his family. Little did he know that as he hammered away at the job site, his world was about to come crashing down around him. As Maria stepped out of their modest apartment, she turned back and smiled. It was just a quick errand after all. She'd be back soon, ready to surprise Carlos with the news of their growing family. But fate had other plans. This would be the last time she'd see her home, the last time she'd breathe the familiar air of her neighborhood. Now, I want you to imagine this. You're going about your day, your mind filled with thoughts of milk, bread, and the joy of a new life growing inside you. Then, in the blink of an eye, everything changes. For Maria, that moment came when she was stopped by immigration officers. No warning, no time to make a phone call, no chance to say goodbye. Just like that, she was swept away into a system that seemed to have no room for compassion or understanding. Meanwhile, Carlos continued his work, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing. He was probably thinking about coming home, hugging his daughter, kissing his wife. Maybe he was even daydreaming about their future, not knowing that future was slipping away with every passing minute. It wasn't until hours later that Carlos found out what had happened. Can you imagine that moment? The confusion, the disbelief, the panic setting in as he realized Maria was gone. By the time he rushed home, by the time he made frantic calls and pieced together what had happened, it was already too late. Maria was already on a plane, being deported to a country she hadn't called home in years. But here's where the story takes an even more tragic turn. The plane that was carrying Maria, carrying their unborn child, never reached its destination. It disappeared somewhere over the ocean, taking with it all the hopes and dreams of a family that was supposed to be growing, not shrinking. Now, I've covered many stories in my career, but I have to tell you, this one hit me hard. The unfairness of it all, the suddenness with which a life can be upended. It's almost too much to bear. But as I dug deeper into Carlos's story, I realized that this wasn't just a tale of tragedy. It was also a story of incredible resilience. You see, Carlos was left with not just the pain of losing his wife and unborn child, but also with the responsibility of raising their daughter alone. He had to be both mother and father, all while grappling with a grief so profound it threatened to swallow him whole. But he didn't let it. Day by day, hour by hour, he found the strength to keep going. I remember sitting with Carlos in their small living room, looking at photos of Maria. Her smile was radiant, her eyes full of life. Carlos told me about how they met, how they fell in love, how they dreamed of building a life together in this country. "She was my everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And now, I have to be everything for our daughter." As Carlos shared his story, I couldn't help but think about the countless other families who have been torn apart by immigration policies. How many other Marias are out there? How many other Carloses are left behind, trying to make sense of a world that suddenly seems so cruel? But here's the thing that struck me most about Carlos: his determination to find answers. Even as he grieved, even as he struggled to make ends meet and care for his daughter, he never stopped searching for the truth about what happened to Maria. He made calls, he wrote letters, he pleaded with anyone who would listen to help him find out what happened to that plane. And in that search for truth, Carlos found a purpose. He became an advocate, not just for his own family, but for all the families who have been separated by deportation. He started speaking out, sharing his story, and fighting for change. "I couldn't save Maria," he told me, "but maybe I can help save other families from going through this pain." It's been years since that fateful day when Maria left to buy milk and never returned. Their daughter is growing up, a spitting image of her mother. And Carlos? He's still fighting, still searching for answers, still holding on to hope. Because that's what you do when love is torn away too soon. You hold on, you fight, you hope. As I wrapped up my time with Carlos, I asked him what he wanted people to take away from his story. He thought for a moment, then said, "I want them to know that love doesn't end with deportation or death. It lives on in the people left behind, in the memories we cherish, in the changes we fight for." And that, my friends, is the heart of this story. It's not just about loss. It's about the strength we find in the face of unimaginable pain. It's about the power of love to transcend borders, policies, and even death itself. Carlos and Maria's story is a reminder that behind every headline, every statistic about immigration, there are real people, real families, real love stories. So the next time you hear about deportation or immigration policies, I want you to think of Maria, of Carlos, of their daughter. Think of the ultrasound picture that never got to be shared, of the family that never got to grow. And then, I want you to ask yourself, what can we do to ensure that no more families are torn apart like this? This is the story of a woman who left home one morning, never to return, and the husband who was left to pick up the pieces. Hello, I'm Sarah, and I'm on a mission to uncover stories of resilience and triumph that often go untold. And one of those stories is about a couple whose lives were torn apart in an instant, but whose love and determination shine through even the darkest of times. As someone who spent years documenting tales of human perseverance, I can tell you that this one will stay with you long after you hear it. So let's dive into a story that reminds us of the fragility of life and the strength of the human spirit. You know, when I first heard about Maria and Carlos, I couldn't help but think about how quickly our lives can change. One moment, you're living your everyday life, and the next, everything you know is turned upside down. It's like when you're driving along a familiar road, and suddenly, without warning, you hit a detour that takes you somewhere you never expected to go. So let me paint you a picture of that fateful day. Maria woke up early, just like any other morning. She kissed her sleeping daughter on the forehead, careful not to wake her. As she got ready to leave, she patted her pocket, feeling the small, folded ultrasound image tucked safely inside. It was her little secret, a spark of joy she couldn't wait to share with Carlos when he got home from work that evening. As Maria stepped out the door, she turned back for a moment, taking in the sight of her home, her sanctuary. She had no idea it would be the last time she'd see it. Can you imagine? Walking out your front door, thinking you'll be back in just a few minutes, never knowing that your entire world is about to shift on its axis. Maria's errand was simple. Just a quick trip to the corner store for some milk. Her daughter loved her morning cereal, and Maria loved seeing her little girl's face light up at breakfast. It was these small, everyday moments of happiness that Maria cherished. As she walked down the street, she couldn't help but smile, thinking about the new life growing inside her and the future that lay ahead. But fate had other plans that day. As Maria was leaving the store, a routine immigration check turned into a nightmare. Without warning, Without a chance to make a phone call or say goodbye, Maria was detained. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, her world came crashing down around her. Now let's talk about Carlos. He was working hard that day, just like every day, at a construction site 2 hours away from home. He had no idea that while he was hammering nails and measuring lumber, his wife was being taken away. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? How our lives can change so dramatically while we're just going about our daily routines. When Carlos finally found out what had happened, it was already too late. The plane carrying Maria had already taken off, headed for a country she hadn't called home in years. Can you imagine the panic, the helplessness he must have felt? It's like reaching out to catch something precious as it falls, only to have it slip through your fingers at the last second. But here's where the story takes an even more tragic turn. The plane that was supposed to carry Maria to her deportation never reached its destination. It disappeared somewhere over the ocean, leaving behind nothing but questions and heartbreak. Carlos was left not only without his wife, but without any closure, any certainty about what had happened to her. Now, Carlos was faced with an impossible situation. He had to be both mother and father to their daughter, all while grappling with the loss of his wife and unborn child. He had to find a way to explain to his little girl why mommy wasn't coming home, when he himself couldn't fully understand or accept it. But you know what? Carlos didn't give up. He couldn't. He had a daughter who needed him, and he had a promise to keep to Maria, to give their child the best life possible. So, he started piecing together the truth, bit by agonizing bit. He reached out to lawyers, to immigrant rights organizations, to anyone who might be able to help him understand what had happened and why. It wasn't easy. There were days when the weight of it all seemed too much to bear. Days when he'd look at his daughter and see Maria's smile, and it would take everything in him not to break down. But he kept going, kept fighting, because that's what Maria would have wanted. As the months turned into years, Carlos became an advocate for immigrant rights. He shared his story, painful as it was, to raise awareness about the human cost of harsh immigration policies. He wanted to make sure that no other family would have to go through what he and his daughter had endured. And you know what? People listened. Carlos's story touched hearts and opened minds. It sparked conversations about compassion, about the importance of keeping families together, about the need for immigration reform. In his grief and his struggle, Carlos found a purpose: to be a voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. But even as he fought this larger battle, Carlos never forgot the personal one. He kept searching for answers about what had happened to Maria. He refused to give up hope that someday, somehow, he might learn the full truth about that terrible day. And his daughter? She grew up knowing her mother through the stories Carlos told her. He made sure she knew how brave Maria was, how much she loved her, how excited she had been about the new baby. That ultrasound image that Maria had carried in her pocket that day became a treasured keepsake, a tangible link to the mother and sibling she had lost. As I sit here, telling you this story, I can't help but think about the strength it takes to keep going in the face of such tragedy. Carlos and his daughter are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. They remind us that even in our darkest moments, there is light to be found if we have the courage to look for it. Their story is far from over. Every day, Carlos continues to honor Maria's memory through his actions, his advocacy, and his love for their daughter. He's turned his pain into purpose, his loss into a legacy. And in doing so, he's not just keeping Maria's memory alive. He's creating change that could prevent other families from suffering the same fate. You know, when I first started sharing stories like this, I wondered if it would make a difference. But then I see people like Carlos, people who take their personal tragedies and use them as fuel to create positive change in the world. And I'm reminded of why these stories need to be told. Because every story of resilience, every tale of overcoming impossible odds, has the power to inspire others. It reminds us that we're capable of more than we know, that we can find strength we didn't know we had when we need it most. And maybe, just maybe, by sharing these stories, we can create a world where fewer people have to face such heartbreaking challenges in the first place. That's it for this story. Let me know in the comments below how Carlos and Maria's story has affected you. Have you ever faced a situation that seemed impossible to overcome? How did you find the strength to keep going? Remember, your story matters too, and sharing it could be the inspiration someone else needs to keep fighting. I'm Sarah, and if you want to hear more stories of triumph over adversity, make sure to subscribe to this channel. A huge thank you to my supporters, who make it possible for me to continue sharing these important stories. If you'd like to support this work, you can find out how in the description below. Until next time, remember that even in our darkest moments, there's always hope. Goodbye, and keep believing in the power of the human spirit.